Hi everyone, my name is Cam Bauman, and this is my presentation on applying the theory of planned behavior to understand voting intentions among eligible U.S. voters. This project was conducted as part of my research seminar course at Ball State University, and it focuses on what drives people to vote or not vote, especially with the 2026 U.S. midterm elections coming up. This topic is incredibly relevant because although voting is a key civic duty, voter turnout in the United States remains disappointingly low, particularly during midterm elections. In younger voters, those who are often the most impacted by election outcomes are consistently underrepresented in turnout statistics. So why don't more people vote? In every election cycle, millions of Americans who are legally eligible to vote simply don't. For instance, the 2022 U.S. midterm elections saw only about 46% voter turnout, and the numbers are even lower among younger adults. This raises a critical question. How can we better understand and influence the psychological processes behind the decision to vote? That's where psychological theory becomes useful, particularly the theory of planned behavior. The theory of planned behavior, or TPB, suggests that human behavior is driven by three components: attitudes, perceived social norms, and perceived behavioral control, also known as PBC. In the context of voting, attitude refers to how positively or negatively someone feels about voting. Normative pressure reflects how much people feel influenced by others, like family, friends, or society. And PBC involves how easy or difficult someone thinks it will be to actually vote. This model has been used across multiple domains, from health behaviors to environmental actions, and increasingly in political science research. Let's break down what previous research has found about each component. First, we'll start with attitudes. Studies show that when people believe voting is personally meaningful, they're more likely to vote. Two sources I found highlight how positive motivation toward voting is a major driver of political engagement. Second, we'll talk about perceived norms. Another source found that people living in politically engaged households were significantly more likely to vote. Similarly, another source found that peer influence affects how adolescents and young adults think about civic participation. Lastly, PBC. Feeling confident in your ability to vote, like knowing where to go, how to register, or how to fill out a ballot, makes a big difference. Two more sources show that people with higher confidence are more likely to follow through. So what was the purpose of this study? I wanted to apply the TPB framework to explore whether three psychological factors, attitude, social pressure, and perceived behavioral control, predict voting intentions in the U.S. for the upcoming 2026 midterms. The hypothesis was simple. Participants who had more positive attitudes about voting felt more social encouragement to vote and had greater confidence in their ability to vote, but also report stronger intentions to vote. Let's talk about who participated in the study. I had 118 participants aged 18 to 65 plus, with a mean age of 42. The majority were female at 78.8% and non-Hispanic white at 86.4%. And over 98% were already registered to vote. While the sample does reflect some diversity in age and gender identity, it's important to acknowledge that convenient sampling, recruiting through social media and personal networks, may limit the ability to generalize. We used a 34-item online survey distributed through Qualtrics. The survey was based on validated TPP instruments and modified to fit our specific behavior. Voting in the 2026 midterm elections. Each TPP component was measured with multiple 7-point Likert items. For example, one item measuring attitude was, for me, voting in the 2026 midterm elections is valuable. Normative pressure was measured with items like, most people important to me think I should vote. And PPC included questions like, how confident are you that you could vote if you wanted to? Now on the results. All three TPP variables were significantly positively correlated with voting intention. The strongest correlation was between attitude and intention, with 0.851, showing that how people feel about voting really matters. Normative pressure and PPC also showed moderate to strong positive correlations. And these findings are in line with what we would expect based on TPP theory. We also conducted a multiple regression analysis to see which factors were most predictive when considered together. The model was significant and explained 76% of the variance in voting intention. That's a large effect size. Attitude and normative pressure were both significant predictors, but interestingly, perceived behavioral control was not. And this suggests that when people already feel positive about voting and perceive social support, their confidence may matter less. So what do these findings tell us? First, they reaffirm that attitudes and perceived social norms are strong predictors of voting intention. This matches past research in different cultural contexts, like Singh et al. In Malaysia and Hennessy in the US. However, our finding that PPC was not significant in the regression model contrasts with some previous work. One explanation is that our sample was already very confident and mostly registered to vote, meaning there wasn't much variation in perceived control. Strengths of the study include its solid theoretical foundation, use of validated measures, and relatively diverse participant age range. The use of both correlational and regression analysis also allows us to see both relationships and unique predictors. Limitations include the self-selected sample and lack of behavioral tracking. We measured intention, not actual voting behavior. Also, since most participants were already registered, we may have missed important insight from unregistered or first-time voters. Strengths of the study include its solid theoretical foundation, use of validated measures, and relatively diverse participant age range. The use of both correlational and regression analysis also allows us to see both relationships and unique predictors. Limitations include the self-selected sample and lack of behavioral tracking. We measured intention, not actual voting behavior. Also, since most participants were already registered, we may have missed important insight from unregistered or first-time voters. This study has real-world applications. If campaign organizers or civic groups want to boost voter turnout, they should focus on shifting attitudes and strengthening positive social norms around voting, like through peer influence, family encouragement, or public messaging. Future research should include unregistered or first-time voters and maybe test specific interventions. It would also be valuable to explore emotional or identity-based influences, as TPP may not fully capture the social and cultural meaning behind voting. In conclusion, the study supports the theory of planned behavior as a valuable framework for understanding what influences people's intention to vote. While confidence plays a role, the biggest drivers are still how people feel about voting and how much they think others expect them to. On these next two slides, I have my list of references that I used for the study and conducting all of my research. I really hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and I want to thank you for watching.